Donna Wootton, daughter of Lloyd Moon Wootton, we moved here when I was in grade 8. My father was a lacrosse player, and when he stopped playing lacrosse in Peterborough, that's when he bought a business and moved here. So I went to high school here. I went to Port Hope High School, and then I moved away. And my father's business, originally, he rented a space on Queen Street, 13 Queen Street.
Okay.
And then he bought a building. This was in 1960 when we first moved. Then he bought a building on Ontario Street, and that was his own building, and he moved the dry cleaning business to Ontario Street from Queen Street. Now, in 1980, during the flood, the unique thing about my father was that he had flood insurance.
Okay.
Nobody else had flood insurance. And what he did was he opened the back door and the front door. He picked everything up from the floor, opened the front door and the back door, and just let the water flow through so there'd be minimal damage. Now, I speculated, why did he have flood insurance? I did write a book about my father because he is a charter inductee into the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame.
That's cool.
And so I sort of speculated why, but my sister has proposed that the flood insurance was because it was a laundry business. So it, although nobody else had insurance, it may not be that unusual for his type of business to have had insurance. So he was fortunate that way. And this picture in the book about the rising water on Ontario Street shows where New Service Cleaners was. The other unique thing that I remember very well about businesses back in those days is that they closed on Wednesday afternoon. And my sister recalls once, all of us worked, well, most of us worked for my dad at some point or other. I used to work on Saturday afternoons. And my sister recalls once being downtown and somebody from Toronto asking her, why are all the businesses closed? And she thought he was from Mars and just said the obvious, well, it's Wednesday afternoon. And what she also remembers is that the drugstores would take turns closing so that people who had health needs could get their drugs. But otherwise, what happened is most of the businesses closed, and my father was very much part of the business community, and they would go off and play golf at Penryn Park on Wednesday afternoons. That was, men's day to play golf. That was very typical, and it made for lots of friendships through the years. And my mother did the repairs. So my mother had a sewing machine, and she did the repairs as well as raised 7 children. So it was, yes, so it was a lot of work for her. And of course she got rid of that sewing machine as soon as they closed the business. My father had stopped playing lacrosse, and also when he had moved to Peterborough, he had moved from Owen Sound with 2 other lacrosse players, and they were given jobs at General Electric. And that was kind of part of the, that's what part of attracting these lacrosse players to the Peterborough team. And so they liked it in Peterborough. They liked living in Peterborough, and I started school in Peterborough. But the General Electric had laid people off. So that was a bit of a problem, of course, not having work, because when we were in Peterborough, as well as the salary from his work at General Electric, the players did get a salary for playing lacrosse, even though it was considered sort of an amateur sport. They did get paid. So it did supplement the family income. So he was looking around for something else to do, and this came up. This business came up. And I'm not too sure exactly who supported him, but I know he did get some support. And we had family friends on our street in Peterborough who later became the mayor of Peterborough, and he and some other men came down and helped my father set up the business. I actually talk about that in the book too. Mm-hmm. So that's, it was just an opportunity. It was an opportunity for them.
You ever spend time downtown frequenting other businesses?
A few. Of course, Reisler's dress shop. Mm-hmm. So I was in high school with Susan Reisler, and my brothers were in high school with her brothers, and they've continued to be friends over the years. And so they ran the only dress shop, and their relatives ran the only dress shop in Peterborough, and Margot's ran the only dress shop in Coburg. So it that was you know, you didn't travel to box stores or to other places to shop. You tended to shop locally. Now, mind you, I got a lot of hand-me-downs from my cousin, but when you went shopping, you went to Reisler's. Mm-hmm. And of course, Gould's shoe store has always been there.
Yeah.
It's always been there, and it's still called Gould's, although it's not owned by the Goulds, but I was in school with Nancy Gould as well. So, yeah, you tended to know other people, and certainly other shop owners. The one shop that I distinctly remember was Happy Home Bakery. Mm-hmm. Now, my mother, of course, did the baking for her big family. But when I worked at the Cleaners, I would go to Happy Home Bakery and get a meat pie, and I would heat it on the steamer, and that would be my lunch. So that's what I looked forward to.
That's nice. You mentioned that you wrote a book about your father. Would you like to talk about that for a minute? Sure.
I did a book launch at Furby House Books, which was very nice of them to support me in that way. Because my father died in 1989 of a massive heart attack. But before then, I had interviewed him. He was quite a storyteller. And people who knew him and remember him telling lots of stories. So I got his stories on tape. And he had quite a unique voice as well, because when he was a young player, he played goalie, he'd been hit in the throat with a lacrosse ball, and you know, it's an Indian rubber ball, they're very hard. So it was kind of a life and death situation, and I wrote about that in the book. And some people didn't know that story. It's interesting, that's not the story he shared with people. But he would share lots of good anecdotes about play. So I had that to work on when I first started. And then I was able to do a lot of research. I went to Own Sound, and they had microfiche, the old Own Sound Sun-Times on microfiche, so I did a lot of research up there. I also went to Peterborough. Peterborough has, at the Memorial Arena, they have a Peterborough Sports District Hall of Fame.
Okay.
So it's manned by quite a lot of dedicated volunteers, and it's open Tuesday and Thursday morning. So often I would go up there, and many of the volunteers remembered my father, and there were pictures, and they have all kinds of archival material that they collect and encourage people to donate. So I was able to get lots of information from those two sources. I also went about the province interviewing some of his old friends and players who are still alive.
Okay.
Well, actually, another thing that my other sister remembered very clearly is always decorating the window for Christmas. So one of my younger sisters would do that quite regularly. And sponsoring other events like local parades, July 1st parades, Christmas parades. Those are all aspects of small towns, you know, that people are involved with when they have storefronts.